So, our topic today is finding solid ground when everything's changing. And for many or most of us, if not all of us, this is true right now. That it can feel like everything's changing. It could be changing within your life. There's a lot of us going through some kind of transition, whether it's the beginning or end of a relationship, or maybe a crisis or a conflict, right? Or changing jobs, or moving, or loss of a loved one, or the birth of a child or a grandchild, or new friends in our lives, a new hobby, like you name it. There's a lot of things that can be changing in our lives. And certainly all around us in society, whether you're in the United States or elsewhere in the world, there's a lot going on these days, right? Whether it's political polarization, whether it's the major conflict in the Middle East right now, whether or a series of conflicts really, um, uh, or what's been going on in this hemisphere in terms of Venezuela, and now it looks like Cuba, and economically, right? We've had a lot going on the last several years, and now the Middle East conflict is disrupting things more and creating more uncertainty. AI is changing things in ways that we're really not prepared for yet. Um, uh, and we're still, even though we don't talk about it a lot, we're still dealing with the aftermath of COVID on so many levels. So there's a lot going on, and so it really can feel like everything's changing. And how do you find solid ground? How do you ground yourself during these times, which we're going to have throughout our lives, right? Various times. A lot of the time, change is constant, right? It's one of the few things you can actually count on. Change is constant, right? And even for yourself, even when you feel like things are pretty stable, you're either growing or you're rotting, right? You're not staying exactly the same. You're getting better, you're getting worse in different ways. And and so we need to find a way to find solid ground, to create solid ground, to ground ourselves when a lot of things sometimes in our lives, or even one big thing, is changing, right? Or a lot of stuff is changing, right? Like it might feel like that now. I've certainly felt that a lot in my lives. I've moved, I think, 21 times or something like that. I have had four careers. They've been great ones. I'm very, very blessed. But four different careers, right? And had kids. They're now grown, so empty nesting, two marriages and divorces, right? Other relationships. I'm the change guy. If things are, this is one of the reasons why I'm a good life coach, is that, like, if you're dealing with change and transitions and all that, I've been there, done that, and I'm the guy you want in the foxhole with you when you know what hits the fan. So I know what this is like and how important it is to be able to ground ourselves even when a lot feels in flux, right? Really, really important. Um, and so we're going to talk about that. Um, and and it's sometimes the changes are good ones, and sometimes we feel in the moment that they're not. They may end up being good ones in the end, right? You may end up being happier or having a better life or better opportunity in the long run, but in the short run, that sometimes they feel not so good. um, but but regardless, it can create a sense of instability, uncertainty, and that's challenging to our nervous systems, because our nervous systems were programmed when we were in prehistoric times to seek out and crave and cling to what's familiar, right? Because familiar tended to mean safe. The berries that I knew were the ones that wouldn't kill me, right? Same thing with the people, right? If I knew these people were safe, I could hang out with these people. If I didn't know these people, they might want to steal my stuff or kill me or something. Um, and so we're programmed for that. It serves us well at times, but a lot of the time it does not. There was the most emailed article in the New York Times 11 years ago, I think, why we married the wrong person. And it was basically because we have this instinct to seek out what's familiar. And in terms of partners, we seek what's familiar in terms of things that feel familiar from our parents or their relationship when we were a kid. And it tends to be negative emotional connections because those are often the strongest memory engrams. So here we are, like seeking out people who remind us of the worst things about our parents or their relationship, right? Uh, and so sometimes it steers us not so well, right? But uh, but we need to be aware of it, that inclination, because it's going to cause resistance with it within us when we do face uncertainty or change, and uh, oftentimes it will cause us to resist good changes, right? And it will get in the way of us responding thoughtfully and rationally to times of uncertainty and change, because that uncertainty tends to trigger fight or flight mechanisms inside of us, right? So we cling to what's familiar, we cling to the status quo, we resist the changing stuff around us, we hunker down, right? Get defensive, right? Emotionally, intellectually, um, physically sometimes, when we're faced with uncertainty and change. Uh, but that causes resistance, that causes suffering, and it blocks us from doing things that are good for us, right? And that's just physiological, right? That we're going to get triggered in that way, right? We're going to get into fight or flight, and that we're going to respond in that defensive stance. Um, Buddha talked about this too, right? On sort of a spiritual side of things, that we tend to cling to the status quo and try to possess it and control it. Often when we have little or no control, and that causes us suffering, right? And so part of what we need to do is to let go of that clinging and just be fully present, right? Again, mindfulness practice, right? Like we were practicing a couple of minutes ago, so that we can be truly present and as rationally as possible deal with what's right in front of us, right? And not cause the suffering of clinging to the past, of resisting the change that is right in front of us and happening all around us, right? And some of which may be really good for us. So, and for a lot of us, there's like also cognitive overload, because a lot of us are managing multiple transitions, either in our own lives or around us in our families and society at the same time. So that's cognitively overloading us, right? And 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 we're just trying to get by, so we don't even stop to take a breath to acknowledge how difficult this is, right? It's almost like, we're afraid to stop and take a step back, and because we're afraid we're going to scare the crap out of ourselves by everything that's going on in and around us. Um, but we need to acknowledge that, and that it's disorienting, so that we can then, as rationally as possible, figure out what we want to do in this moment moving forward, right? Um, it feels to us often like we're unmoored, that we've lost our anchor, right? And we keep looking for the solid ground out there, like somehow we're going to find it out there, right? The next job is what's going to be better. That's going to ground me. That's going to create stability. The next relationship is going to do that. The next plan I come up with, that's going to do it, right? Hoping somehow desperately that that's what's going to ground us, right? We're going to find that new anchor out there. The reality is It's in here. You're going to find it in here. That's where the work needs to be done, right? That's the bulk of what I do. I do so much work helping people with transitions, and that's, young, old, people in their teens and 20s, right? Starting off life, people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, realizing that the life they've got isn't what they actually want or need. You name it, right? Or dealing with loss. It's the internal work. We got to do the internal work, ground us, right? That's where we're going to find the grounding. We're going to anchor ourselves through the internal work, right? Um, so here's where what we tend to do when we're avoiding that work. So you can spot this in yourself, maybe, right? Like what are the what are the signs that you're avoiding the internal work and grasping at the straws, trying to find uh, solid ground, right? Certainty, especially if you're a maximizer, right? You're trying to maximize the outcome of different decisions and situations. You'll relate to this. Over planning, over researching, right? I've done that in the past, right? Guilty as charged, right? Like just, I remember when my dad died, and I also had an engagement, and that relationship was finally, over for good. I felt like I told a friend I had to reach up to touch bottom. And I was looking for anything that would ground me. I was so desperate. I felt so unmoored that I convinced myself I was going to buy a computer. It would have been my first computer. I knew I wasn't going to buy a computer in that moment. I was actually living overseas in Moscow. There was no way I was bringing a personal computer to Moscow. And uh, but I spent a couple of weeks researching the crap out of computers and going to different stores and looking at them and trying them out and talking to the salespeople and all that. I just that that certainty I was seeking was a distraction, right? It was something I was trying to control, right? We try to control the outcomes of different situations. We become a little bit control freaks. Anxiety, in some ways, becomes our coping strategy, right? Uh, the certainty is a fantasy, though, right? I mean, it's always a fantasy. We don't have certainty about anything, really, or very few things in life, other than right now. We're here right now. That's it. And I can control what I do right now in this moment. That's about it. That's certainty. Um, so if you find yourself like craving certainty, getting out of control with your over planning, over researching, trying to control other people, that's a sign, right? You're avoiding the internal work. Seeking other people's approval. This is textbook. A lot of us do this, right? Where we are unmoored, ungrounded ourselves. So we're trying to get other people to tell us that we're okay. But looking for external validation is always a dead end, right? It's going to evaporate when those other people change their minds and all of a sudden are not as pleased with us. And it's not actually something we can count on, right? What we can count on throughout our lives is validation from within, right? Self love, self validation. So if you find yourself seeking it from other people, that's gonna collapse, right? As soon as they shift in any way, shape, or form, right? And they're constantly changing too. They're in flux too. Um, and then, as I said earlier, the other thing we look for is like, okay, a job, get a new job, that'll fix it. Move to a new city, that'll fix it. Get a new relationship, that'll fix it. But those things, if you think about it like a metaphor of a house, those aren't the foundation. They're like the furniture in the house. But you got to build the foundation for the house before you can put anything in it. The foundation is the internal work. right? That's where you're going to ground yourself, right? So let me pause there for a minute. I've been talking at you a lot. Anything resonating with you? Questions? Things you're confusing about? You things you can relate to? Sandy says hi, and I get your story, Steve. Mom died right at the start of the pandemic. I'm so sorry for your loss. My siblings acted so bizarre, I had to let them go. Then I found this app. Well, Sandy, I'm sorry for your losses. I mean, that's really multiple losses. But again, yeah, death in a family, and I've experienced this too, can lead to really sometimes bizarre, unhealthy, hurtful behavior on the part of other people who love each other, right? I mean, it's just so tragic. It compounds it. But again, like sometimes that's them like trying to have control over a situation. And that's really happened to me from someone or people in my life at a time of loss. So, doesn't excuse it, but I tried in that moment to have empathy and compassion um, for them as well as for myself, and to put boundaries into place. But yeah, really hard, really hard. I'm glad you found this app, and I'm glad you found us. So welcome. Um, uh, so again, like understanding that these behaviors that we engage in when we're surrounded by uncertainty, by change, right? It's natural, right? That you're going to get into fight or flight, that you're going to get into a defensive stance. Your brain, your amygdala takes over. You're constantly looking for subconsciously or consciously more threats, right? So that's a completely different stance, right? You get you know stress hormones are coursing through your veins, right? Like we all know that feeling. So and those circumstances, unfortunately, is like the worst time that you're going to be actually able to act rationally and find your footing, right? So again, first we need to settle our nervous system, right? So you should have some techniques, some tools in your toolbox to calm your nervous system, right? Meditation, breathing exercises, right? Like we were doing at the beginning of this session. Sometimes going for a walk outside in nature. Sometimes it's just stepping outside for a minute and getting some sun in your face. Listening to some soothing music, right? Uh, Lots of different ways. Some people it's a little journaling, whatever it is for you, right? You can have that array of tools in your toolbox, and depending on the circumstances, you reach for one or another. Calm your nervous system, because your nervous system can go one of two ways. You can either get it back to a place of calm when it's disrupted, or it's going to shut down because it can't stay disrupted for too long. It's going to just shut down. You keep doing that, you can end up in depression, right? But at a minimum, you feel like you need to withdraw, you need to be quiet, you can't be around people, it's hard to function, maybe, right? I definitely have had times where that's been my response. So when we're in fight or flight, when our nervous system is disrupted, we've got to get it back up to a place of calm so we don't shut down. So because in the calm place, we can work on grounding. We're not going to work on grounding if we're shut down, right? So have these techniques, get your nervous system to a place of calm. And then you can do the internal work, right? To create the grounding, right? Um, and I have found this to be true in transitions and change that I initiated, like when I quit the State Department in protest. I've also found it when other stuff happened to me and I felt like I didn't have any control over it at all, right? How this plays out, very similar no matter what, right? Sandy says, yes, it is so necessary to get out of cycling and destructive thoughts. Exactly, right? Exactly, right? And again, in some cases, you may need some help. Call a crisis hotline. your therapist or a therapist, a mental health professional, um, right? If it's not, a mental health crisis, it may be your life coach, it may be, a friend or a mentor, right? Um, who will listen and, help calm you as opposed to, uh, most of us have people in our lives who will catastrophize and make things worse. We don't want to be around them in these moments, right? Um, so, and then, once we get ourselves to a place of calm, right? Uh, then we can do the internal work, right? So, what's the internal work look like? First, what are your core values? Like, what's really important to you, no matter what, over time, right? And this is something you may want to journal about, meditate about, talk to your life coach about, right? This is part of the process that I take people through, where you can really go back to this grounding, like, who am I at my core, right? Your authentic self, right? When the fear mechanisms are turned off, when the inner voice is quiet, like, what do you really care about? Who are you trying to be and become, right? Those core values, those core beliefs, right? That guide you and support you, right? To be the best version of your authentic self, right? That's the most important thing, right? What are those core values? That if you live in accordance with those values every day, you can look yourself in the mirror when you go to bed and like and love that person, right? And respect that person. And again, if you've been acting without integrity and violating one or more of your core values, it's okay, right? Like, that was the past. Can't change it. Empathy for yourself, right? That was the best you could do. May not have been very good, but that was the best you could do. What can I do moving forward? Because I can control now. So, how do I want to live now? Do I want to be a person of integrity? Do I want to live in alignment with my core values? Then I'm going to do that starting right now, just one moment at a time. I can control that and I can do it. I can do anything for a moment, anything. And the rest of your life is just going to be a series of moments, one after another. So take one little step after another. I choose right now, this moment, today, to be a person of integrity, to live in accordance with my core values. And I have clarity about what those values are. And that's what I'm going to do right now. That's it. Right? We make it more complicated than it needs to be. But that's it. That's where we find the grounding in a clear idea of who you really are deep down inside and who you want to be. And just to commit to being that person right now. When you feel distracted by the past or the future, right? When your nervous system gets disrupted, calm yourself, focus yourself back on this moment, right? We know how to do it. That's why we're here on Insight Timer, right? To practice mindfulness, to get better at that, to build that muscle, to build that practice, one moment at a time. That's how we ground ourselves, right? And then you can deepen that work, right? If you want to go into deeper work, then, I take people through, building a mission statement and clarity about how they want to show up in the main roles and responsibilities they have in life, and a vision for where they're headed over the next couple of years that they feel good about, that grounds them, that guides them, that becomes their moral compass, that becomes their North Star for making decisions. So that when everything around you is chaotic and in flux, you know in this moment how you want to show up: loving, empathetic, compassionate, courageous, curious, whatever those core values are for you, right? That's how I want to show up. So when I'm facing decisions, when I'm facing moral dilemmas, when I'm facing a fork in the road, I know which way to go. I've built my compass. I have my map. That's what grounds me, right? And I'm going to have to make adjustments along the way because other things and people are changing. That's okay. But if I've grounded myself with my values and my beliefs and my sense of direction of who I'm trying to become and where I'm headed, how I want to show up, I can handle that, right? I'm on more solid ground than I would be otherwise, right? By having done that internal work. That's why it's so important. So important, right? Um, all right, so let's take a pause. Maybe if you feel comfortable again, close your eyes or gaze softly across the room. And I want you to just kind of meditate softly about what's one thing about you that after everything you've been through has remained steady. Is it a quality about you? Is it a value that you live in alignment with? A strength you have? A resilience? What is it? A practice? A healthy habit? Right? Like meditation or journaling or walks in nature, whatever it is, gratitude practice, intention setting, or a value. What's remained constant for you that can be part of your anchor? See what comes up. And then thinking about your values, what's something that you value? What's one value that you have that you hold so deeply? No one can take it from you, even when things get chaotic around you, right? No matter what the circumstances, that will hold true. And then right now, being present here, focusing on things that have remained constant and ground you. What does grounding feel like right now? What does solid ground feel like right now? What does it feel like in your body to have this moment where you're maybe a little more grounded than you were half an hour ago? What's that feel like? Because that's the feeling you're going to try to come back to when you're feeling unmoored. You're going to come back to this feeling, right? Come back to your breathing, close your eyes, and imagine feeling this steadiness again, this connection to the earth, this clarity. When you feel ready, you can open your eyes, and if you feel comfortable, share in the chat anything that came up during that little brief meditation. Um, what's been constant, your value that you have remained steady with, what groundedness feels like, any of that, right? Um, Sandy says ancestral trauma is a big factor in my life. I'm sorry, but that's important to understand, right? So you can work on the healing and understand when it gets triggered and how to deal with that through calming your nervous system, right? And grounding yourself in your own reality and your own values, right? Deanna says, my connection with the divine, great. Um, Sandy says, to accept the anxiety of my mom as her way to survive. Yeah, for a lot of people, that was, right? That was their survival instinct. They had not been in this session. So they didn't know what to do with it otherwise, right? That was a lot of my mother's uh, truth was that I think her anxiety was her crutch, right? And uh, worrying about things was her struggling for control, right? Because there was so much uncertainty otherwise in her life and so much fear. And yeah, yeah, without a doubt. Beth says, no matter what is happening in my life, I always have the forest around me to ground. That's beautiful. I live my life with integrity and kindness. That is beautiful, Beth. I love that. As many of you know, my company, my whole practice, my podcast is integrity and joy, because I think this is what we're talking about. The groundedness is the integrity, right? That's what we ground ourselves in, the integrity of our lives, that we're living in alignment with our core values and beliefs. That's what it's about. That's what grounds us, right? Um, for me, also, Beth, it's interesting. Like nature, particularly the being on the water, like walking along the beach or out in the forest, those things ground me tremendously, tremendously. Uh, I feel truly present and connected to the wisdom of the universe, of nature. Really powerful for me. And meditation, not surprisingly, as a meditation teacher here on Insight Timer, but meditation, even when I'm struggling with my meditation practice, which I do at times, including recently, when I do, it's so grounding, right? Even if it's just for a brief moment, um, and that's what I feel. I feel that in some ways, the more I turn inward when I'm meditating, I feel more connected to everyone and everything in the universe, right? So it's really interesting that by turning inward and doing the internal work, I feel more expansive in my connection. Right? I don't know if that makes sense to anybody else, but yeah. Beth added, I'm surrounded by water and forest. I have a huge rock garden in my front yard, grounded. That's awesome. Like literally grounded, right? The rock garden. That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. Anybody else have anything that's resonating with you, that you're connecting with, that's relatable? Questions, situations, dilemmas that you're having that relate to this in any way, pop it in the chat. I'm sure somebody else will be able to relate to it too. Maybe be inspired by you. And while you're thinking about that, and maybe writing something, um, uh, let's think about what's one thing that you can do this week to ground yourself a little bit better. Right? Is it that you're going to um, deepen your meditation practice, that you're going to do a little bit of extra journaling around your core values, um, that you're going to ground yourself in gratitude, right? Because again, when everything's changing and we have a lot of fear and anxiety about that, gratitude can ground us, right, in a really powerful way when we're surrounded by a lot of fear and uncertainty, right? Because there's plenty of stuff to worry about, but there's also plenty of stuff throughout our lives to be grateful for, even if it's getting up in the morning and having a roof over your head or food on the table, whatever it is, your health, whatever. We have things to be grateful for, each other, and the opportunity to do this, right? It's phenomenal. Um, so, what's one thing this week, just one step you're going to take that leads you to being more grounded, right? Getting more clarity and being more grounded amidst all the turmoil around you, right? Um, uh, Sandy said, I have a teacher that said he could not experience his third eye until he practiced grounding. Yeah, I could see that. That's in some ways what I'm talking about with my own meditation practice. That's by turning inward. It's really through my third eye that I'm feeling really connected uh, in a much deeper way to everyone and everything. Right. So again, there are these paradoxes in life that are kind of cool, right? Turning inward to feel more connected outwardly and to have more groundedness and stability on the outside, right? Um, Again, anybody else, pop in the chat. What are you committed to doing this week? One small thing. Um, if any of this resonated with you and you'd like to make a donation to support this kind of live content here on Insight Timer, thank you in advance. Really appreciate it. This is a great thing that we have here to be able to have this sense of community and to be on this journey together. I hope you're following me. If you're not, please do. And if you want to do some deeper work with me, you can contact me through my profile here and explore that. If you have any questions about anything that came up in this session, feel free to send me a message. Um, and I have a group here on Insight Timer also on living with integrity and joy. And I hope you'll join that and, share, meditation practices and favorite meditations. And, I'll ask questions of the group from time to time. And I'm going to be, I think, publishing my Substack in there. So I'd love to have you as part of that community. I'm a big community guy, and I want to build a community of people who are trying to live with integrity and joy. Right. I have a mini course as well that a lot of people have taken and seem to like, so I hope you'll give that a shot too. And you can ask me questions. We can have a little conversation within the course, so that's kind of fun. So I hope you'll take that. And then I have a bunch of meditations here on Insight Timer, and I hope you'll take those and rate and review and let me know what kind of meditations you'd like me to do in the future. I'll be doing more in the coming weeks. So again, I hope you'll check those out. And then I do these live sessions once a week, um, and at noon Eastern time. And the next one is a week from today at noon on the courage to stop pretending everything's fine. One of the ways that we resist uh, things that aren't going well, but don't do anything constructively about it, is we pretend that everything's okay. We tell ourselves and other people that everything's okay. Um, and we'll look at why that's so, why we do that, and how to recognize it and what to do so you stop doing that, right? And then you can start taking advantage of the opportunities that dissonance and dissatisfaction and problems in our lives create. They create opportunities for change, for healthy change, for intentionality, for healing, right? For connection and reconnection. So many great things that if we could just stop resisting, right? The reality that things are not okay, right? Everything's not fine, right? In certain aspects of our lives at certain times, then we can alleviate our suffering and create more opportunities for growth and joy and love. I mean, it's really amazing, right? So I hope you sign up for that one. I think that's going to be a good one. Um, Anyways, so back to the chat just to see what people have been putting in the chat. Deanna says, I live near the beach, find much grounding and joy there too. Yeah, it really is. It's a special thing. Very grateful for that. Beth says, pacing my activities, being mindful of my low energy this week. That is phenomenal, right? We got to make sure we do that, right? There's sometimes you can come out of one of these sessions and be like really gung ho, right? Or I have that sometimes, with clients, we'll have a session together, and boy, there's like this explosion of energy and activity the next couple of days, and they burn out a little bit, right? Uh, you've got to pace yourself well, and you've got to be mindful of your energy levels and all that. So that's important. Sandy, thank you for the donation. Really appreciate that. Judy, thank you. Appreciate the kind words. Sandy says, walking my dog in the forest without a phone. Bingo, right? Being out in nature, taking a walk, make it a mindful walk, Just be observant, be present with yourself, not listening to a podcast or music or being on the phone or whatever. Just you and nature, and in this case, your dog. That sounds awesome, right? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Um, yeah, and for me, I think I think the rebound, but deepening my meditation practice again, and more walks on the beach now that the weather is turning a little bit for the better, right? Dana says, I will try to go to bed earlier this week. That's great. And get good quality sleep. That is huge. Maybe the most important thing you can do for yourself right now, right? Because that, again, is going to help your nervous system and make you better able to do the internal work and ground yourself, and be more mindful and intentional about how you're living in alignment with your values, right? So that's a great one. Um, Claire says, could you please share how you grounded yourself while in your previous role as a diplomat? Asking as I'm in a role where I have to be on standby most of the time. Claire, great question. So uh, I would say a couple of things. One is um, I really did, and have found throughout my life, that when I have been more consistent with my mindfulness practice and in particular meditation, I'm more grounded no matter what's going on around me, right? More resilient. So that's huge. The second was really, I would say, the more clarity I got about my core values and what really mattered to me and what my integrity meant to me, right? What it meant to me to live with integrity, the more grounded I became, right? Now, it led me to quit the State Department publicly in protest, but that was a great thing, right? It's one of the things I'm most proud of. And there's my life before that moment and after that moment. And I am a better person, more consistent person, more grounded since that moment than before that moment, right? Because that crisis forced me to get the clarity about what really mattered to me and what my core values were and what I was willing to do for them, right? And that my integrity didn't have a price tag. Um, and so, um, so I think that was huge. I think also I learned very early on during my first tour in Mexico, I had a couple of near death experiences. One, I almost fell off a mountain, and two, bandits with machine guns tried to force us off the road. And in both of those experiences, I learned very quickly that you can't panic, that you've got to calm your nervous system, right? Like we've been talking about today. And then not try to maximize the outcome, but figure out what's a next step right now in this moment that increases my chances, in that case, of surviving, right? In any circumstance, of being the person I want to be and getting the objective, the outcome that I want in that moment. And I can control right now. That's all I can control. So I can't worry about 5 minutes from now or 5 days from now, right? I can't worry about what happened 5 minutes ago. That grounding and that mindfulness saved my life, and it unlocked a perspective that allowed me to be a lot more present and mindful and to create opportunities for extraordinary experiences in the subsequent years. Like amazing. Um, so, yeah, I hope that makes sense. That's what I did. And I'm finishing my memoir, so you'll be able to read all about it soon. Um, Beth said, Claire, that's what I call the mommy brain, where you're always on call, waiting to be needed, and hearing the phantom baby crying. Yeah, and that demands an even greater level of mindfulness, right? Because you've got to take like the cat naps when you can and find the moments of restoration and calm. And so really it is about being as present as you can be in the present moment, and being mindful about what you need energetically in that moment, what is one small step that you can take in the direction of something, right, that you need or want in that moment, whether it's rest and restoration, or, you know, tending to your responsibilities, or, you know, finding time for something else that you have a responsibility for, right? Or finding a brief moment of joy or laughter or love, right? I mean, that's part of it too, right? Um, hope that makes sense. I hope that's helpful. Anybody else before we go? Any other comments or thoughts or questions or situations that you want to throw in the chat? Please do so. Um, and again, just a reminder: make sure you're following, and I hope if you're interested in doing more work or anything resonated, you want to talk about it some more, just reach out to me through my profile. Um, I love having this sense of community that we have here. I'm very grateful to all of you for being a part of that. Um, it's it's a real gift in this day and age. We have so many ways in which real meaningful connection with other people has broken down, and there's so many impediments to it and distractions from it. So to have an opportunity where technology is actually doing what we all hoped it would do, which is bring us together in ways that are healthy and fruitful and restorative and loving and empathetic. That's what we got here, right? A real opportunity to build community and to share this journey together, right? So I'm very grateful for all of you. So thanks again for joining. Again, please make sure you're following, and try the meditations, um, and let me know what other live sessions, topics you'd like me to cover in future sessions. And so again, don't be afraid to reach out and send a message. Yeah, Deanna says, the qualities that AI cannot provide. Yeah, right, exactly. Right, right. Thank you to everybody who participated in the chat. It made it so much better and really wonderful. So thank you very much for that. And I'm sending you all a lot of love and gratitude. Um, be mindful today. Be intentional about how you ground yourself. And again, I think final note, a reminder: everything is temporary. The 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 bad things that are going on in your life, the good things that are going on, the change, the disruptions, everything, it's temporary. Everything's temporary, which means don't get too worked up about the negative stuff, and don't take for granted the good stuff, right? Be grounded. Thank you all. Much love and gratitude.